Okay, here we have a 2003 Mercedes SL500. Now this is an older vehicle, but it has low mileage, only 61,000 miles, and it's actually garage kept. Now it's with us today because the plastic component in the shifter actually broke, and we'll show that in just a moment. But what we wanted to do is kind of go over the vehicle quickly. This is their large displacement, normally aspirated V8 engine. And of course, obviously here we see the oil filter housing and the oil filter plastic cover. There, it's using just one serpentine belt. And we have a variety of things that we're driving. Obviously the alternator, the water pump, the AC compressor, and I also have a rather elaborate power steering pump with two sections, because I have a power steering and I have an active body control system. Yes, I can hydraulically adjust the height of the vehicle up and down, up and down. So this is very nice. One thing that's interesting about this is I go around a corner, the vehicle can actively lean into the corner just like a motorcycle. So very nice performance feature. Now I would say that the Mercedes SL500 is kind of equivalent to the Chevrolet Corvette. That's kind of the market niche that they're after. And one of the sayings is there's no substitute for displacement. So this large 5-liter V8 engine produces tremendous torque right from the get-go, and a very, very spunky car and quite the performance. Now I have two batteries. They actually call this a starting battery. The main battery is there in the back. And why do they call this a starting battery? It's because if something happens and the vehicle sits for a long period of time, or it leaves something on, what happens is the system will note the discharge of the large battery but reserve the starting battery to be able to start the vehicle. Now as we move across here we see our coolant reservoir. One thing nice about this setup is the reservoir is very high, and the water pump is there about midpoint in the engine, so it shouldn't be too much problem to bleed air from the system, as we can see these bleed lines coming up to the reservoir bottle. And of course this is a pressurized reservoir. Here we see the anti-lock brake, control module, hydraulic unit, and of course the motor for the hydraulic pump. Now the fluid for the anti-lock brake system is obviously brake fluid, and that's coming from a large common reservoir over here at the master cylinder. Now on this system, and I'm trying to look very carefully, it looks like it actually has a hydro boost. So this is actually a hydraulic power assist for the power brakes. And here we see the fuse relay center. Okay, here we see the receiver dryer for our air conditioning system, and this looks like the high pressure switch. There it's going to allow me to do several things. One of course is control the auxiliary cooling fan there as the high side pressure exceeds a certain threshold. Here we see my high side fitting, and as we come up we see the low side fitting. Now on this system, the two air cleaners are actually here under these covers, and we do have an engine beauty cover. Okay, here we see a combination of the engine beauty cover and the air cleaners. We have two air cleaners, right and left, here contained within this beauty cover, and here's my attachment there to the throttle body in the back. Okay, now what we've done is they have provided a dipstick here for the automatic transmission, but it has this plastic cover, and as you remove the plastic cover, oftentimes you have to supply your own dipstick. Now this is actually the dipstick for the engine oil, so here I can check engine oil at this point. Alright, now what happens is this is actually the dipstick for the engine. But where's my dipstick? You got to supply your own dipstick. This is just a plug. Now it has an oil monitor. It monitors the level of the oil in the engine. But if you want to check the oil manually, you can, but you have to supply your own dipstick. And the same thing is true with the transmission. No dipstick. So whatever you do, don't get these two mixed up, because you really don't know which one's which, because I don't have a dipstick in either one. But yeah, looking carefully, follow it carefully, you'll see one tube goes to the automatic transmission and the other tube comes down to the lower section, or I should say the upper section of the oil pan. Okay, here we have a mass airflow meter and the throttle body. And we have an elaborate intake manifold. And now this intake manifold has internal valves, so I can control the length of the runners. And you'll notice that I have a low pressure port fuel injection system. Intake manifold, port, fuel injection system. Here is the pressure test port, which somebody left the cap off. And by the way, that's the same size cap, SAE 1/4 inch, that is on a conventional old-fashioned air conditioning system. And so I'll go ahead and replace that. Here we have 8 ignition coils, and this is here is the coil, but we have a little spark plug wire that takes it right down to the spark plug. So I can't really call it coil on plug. How about coil per plug? Now, on this engine, in order to comply with the emissions regulations, I have a air pump. Now, what is this air pump for? Well, what it does is it compresses air and delivers it to the exhaust manifolds. Now, this is only going to run for a short period of time on initial cold start, and then normally it doesn't run again. This is just simply to light off those catalysts and kind of burn those excessive hydrocarbon emissions as a result of condensation losses on a cold start. So here is our air pump. All right, here we have our 2003 Mercedes SL500, and this has suffered the fate of many SL500s, or I should say many Mercedes, that have this style shifter, where the plastic mechanism in the shifter actually breaks, which we of course replaced with an aluminum. Now, here we have the shifter. The transmission is actually in park right now. We've modified this area so it's not quite so difficult to put this in. But as you can see, there is where it has to go. Make sure it's lined up correctly. Now, we're almost ready to go back in, but the actual shift rod was damaged there as we were trying to remove it. We really couldn't help it because we couldn't get it out of park at all, and we were using a large screwdriver to push that linkage off. Now, if we had been smart and realized what was happening, we would have hauled off, just simply moved this back and forth to put the transmission in gear and put it on a lift. Then we could have got underneath and taken it loose from the transmission and then tried to work the whole unit out together as one assembly, which even now looks like that would be difficult. What happens is I have the ducts here for the rear heating and air conditioning. They're kind of interfering with me. So, but there we go, and out she comes. Now, one thing that we opted for here on this particular unit is this actually has this pin, and this pin serves no other purpose but to, when the transmission is in park, it extends and covers this Allen bolt. And what this does is prevent you from taking that bolt loose if the transmission is in park. So we actually had to pry this to the side and work a ball type Allen in there, actually a 3/8 inch drive extension Allen with a ball type head, to be able to loosen that. And once of course we had it loosened, we were able to back it out so it actually lifted the whole housing. We could never actually take the bolt out while that pin was there. We only got the bolt out when we actually disassembled the unit and removed the pin. We opted to not put the pin back. Right, now on the shift linkage itself, this actually had this lock mechanism right here, which we were pulling on and, you know, trying to get it to let go. And apparently we got it to let go, but we didn't understand that there was an aluminum piece here on the back that we weren't identifying, and that's what we were pushing against, and finally that broke, and that's why we're replacing the shift lever. And if I can just reach down here for a moment, pick up the shift lever, and as you can see, there's our attempt to get it off, and we definitely got it off, but now we need this aluminum piece. All right, now the engine's running. I got the transmission in park. I can actually move it around to move the vehicle. You'll notice that when I turn the key, I can't take the key out. Well, what I've got to do is I press this button, and it's very easy to press with my thumb, and then voila, key comes right out. All right, I'm sure many of you have watching this video are having the same kind of problem. Some of these consoles, the whole thing can be lifted up, and there you gain easy access. This one wasn't quite so easy, but be patient, be careful, don't break anything. Okay, this is the infamous plastic part that breaks in the Mercedes floor shifter. Obviously this was a poor choice of material there on the vendor's part or Mercedes part, but obviously the internet is full of these aftermarket machined aluminum replacement levers, and this one includes everything you need: springs and rivets. Now on this particular one, a couple of things that we did. One is there is a tamper resistant pin that extends to cover this bolt if the unit is in park. And that will prevent you from removing this top bolt. So obviously that was very difficult. We had to actually pry that to the side and work a ball type Allen socket in there to carefully take that off. Now unfortunately they don't make this easy on this SL500. This was actually covered by a plastic cover, so we had to come in at an angle, and the ball type long Allen extension, of course driven by a 3/8 ratchet, was absolutely necessary to take these two off. Now this cable right here has a button that you press to allow the key to go to the full off position, so I can only turn the key off if the transmission is physically in park. You have to twist that to the side. Actually, you're going to, from the front, twist it clockwise to line it up and extract it. Be careful, don't break it. Once you pull this out, you'll notice you won't be able to take the key out of the ignition, but just simply press the button. You can do it easily with your hand, and then you'll be able to remove the key. Now, unfortunately, on our application here, in the process of trying to remove the manual linkage, we didn't notice that there was an aluminum piece there in the back that was preventing us from coming all the way off. And apparently the way this is designed, if this is stuck in park, you cannot take this off. How would you do it? You need to put it up in the air and take it loose from the transmission and pull the whole assembly out. Well, we didn't do that. We pried on it, and sure enough, it came loose, but unfortunately in the process we broke the aluminum, so we've ordered a new shift rod, and that's on its way. We should get that shortly. When we put this back, we're going to obviously put it on the lift and take it loose at the transmission. Now the car now can be driven. How are we driving it? We actually are using a pair of needle nose pliers to move the shift linkage there: park, reverse, neutral, and drive. The park neutral switch is there communicated via the transmission electrical connector, so we're able to put it in drive and reverse and actually move the car. The center console is obviously pretty well disassembled. Let's take a look at that. Okay, here we have removed the shifter from the vehicle, and this actually was very difficult. Now, this cable is actually the key lock. If I push this in, I can now turn the key and remove it. So all you have to do is just push that in. That is actually actuated by the manual lever there, which would be held here with 3 fasteners. And here we see underneath, this is actually the shift lever. Had a little issue there. We got a new one coming. All right, now there are different designs. This one, as you can see, is that the center console is integral with the dash. So we could not just take the whole center console out. What we had to do was take this wood panel off first, which, by the way, was quite involved and difficult. And the actual climate control system is held to it with 4 fasteners. They're Torx fasteners. We actually had to take those out very carefully first before we could then lift this unit out. Now, if I could move this out of park into, let's say, drive, then this would have lifted right out. But this was stuck in park, so it made it very difficult. But we did get it out without damaging anything. We went ahead and removed everything just to give us plenty of clearance. We have our new shift rod coming. We'll go ahead and install our shift lever, make sure everything's good, make sure the cable, of course, is positioned correctly, make sure we have all the electrical connectors plugged in correctly, and then we should be ready to go. So we this actually I couldn't have. You say, well, why didn't I take this whole center console out? This is integral with the dash. That's the problem. That was preventing us from doing that. Now let's go ahead, and I actually have the transmission in park now, so really I can actually start the vehicle. There it goes. Now you'll notice the engine starts and runs just fine. I can actually put it in gear with the needle nose pliers and move the vehicle, probably drive it down the road without too much trouble. Obviously I got a check engine light staring at me, most likely because I have the center console, the shift linkage, that's all actually out of the vehicle and disconnected, so it's letting me know that. This vehicle also has an integral cellular phone, so it has quite an array of electronics here. Normally when you're working on a car like this, you want to, of course, disconnect the batteries. Notice the parallel. There we were very careful. We opted not to do that this time. One reason why is we were working on it at night and outside, so we did need the lights here from the vehicle to help us out. All right. Okay, so hopefully if everything goes smoothly, this time next week she'll be back on the road, all back together.